Good evening, everyone. I'm Barbara Peters from the Poison Pen in Scottsdale, Arizona, and due to the magic of Zoom, we are talking to David Ellis, whom we haven't seen for quite some time, and James Patterson, who we've seen relatively often in the last year
More
or
often
two.
than you'd like to.
No, not at all. It's really been wonderful to be able to connect this way. And the truth is, we can do events with Zoom that we really would have a hard time staging live at the store because the logistics would be difficult. In any case, we're here to talk tonight about Look Closer, David Ellis's new book. David, is this your first book by yourself since 2015?
Yeah, it's been a long time. I became a judge in 2014, and I had a little bit of a disagreement with my publisher over a book. And at the same time, I'd been writing with Jim, and I really enjoyed that. I still do. And I now had this job that required a lot of attention, and I thought, okay, everything's going fine. I didn't make a conscious decision to not write. It just sort of happened. I just had so much else going on. I had very small children at that point. And it's been kind of percolating in my head. And, Jim, God bless him, has often said to me, keep writing your own books too. My wife and Jim are always telling me, don't stop that. You need to come back to it. And so I've been thinking about it for a long time. I've had those characters in my head for a long time. And during the pandemic, I finally sat down and did it.
Wow.
And I will tell you, Barbara, it's great. David had sent me the ARC, the advanced reading copy, and I read it a while back. And then I read it again this weekend. And it's so twisty that it's really fun to read it twice. So people are going to buy it tonight. You get twice the fun for your money because you'll want to read it twice. But it is so twisty. There's so many unexpected things that happen. And I loved it. Actually, I had read David's first, I think it was his first book, Line of Vision.
Yeah.
Way back, which won an Edgar, right?
Yes. 2001. Yeah.
Yep. And that was my first experience. And then David at one point went with Larry Kirschenbaum, who Barbara. And that's how we kind of got back together. Well, that's how we got together, actually, through Larry Kirschbaum, who was his agent at that time.
So the other
and
book,
Barbara, I remember this moment. So Larry Kirschbaum comes to me and says, "Do you want to write with James Patterson?" Or he called him Jim, and I didn't know him as Jim. He's James Patterson, right? The big novelist,
Mr. Patterson.
And I said, "Wow, right?" I said, "Wow, wow, that would be great." I said, "But I don't know that I have the same style as his." And he says, "Talk to him, call him, and you guys talk it out." And so I said to Jim, I was kind of nervous when I called him, and I said, "Jim, I'm very flattered that you're thinking of me, but my problem is I don't know how to write a James Patterson book." And what Jim said is, "We're not going to write a James Patterson book. We're going to write a James Patterson, David Ellis book." He said, I want my co-authors to bring their skills. We'll mesh them together. And so the result is we keep everything fresh." And I thought, how can I say no to that? I mean, that was just such a great conversation. I'll never forget that conversation. Jim has probably forgotten it, but I completely remember it. And
I don't. Yeah. Oh, no. Yeah. That's exactly how I remember it. Yeah. That's the way it went. No, I remember it because I've heard you say it one other time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds right. Sounds right. And it is accurate. It is the way we do it. And the books that we do together are different than the books I do by myself or with other writers. I think they're all fairly, the only similarities are probably short chapters. Mostly we have short chapters.
And possibly a shorter book, because this one clocks in at 448 pages. So
yeah.
I've done a few long ones.
Yeah.
With the president. President Clinton tends to go on a little bit.
Yes.
Yes.
We had a wonderful conversation, didn't we? You and President Clinton and I.
Oh,
I
yeah.
still remember that.
Yeah. We were with them. We went out to dinner with he and Hillary on the 3rd of July.
Wonderful.
It's two years in a row we've done the 3rd of July. It's very, very nice. We enjoy them. And no politics. At one point, the Supreme Court came up and I went like, how about those Yankees?
Yeah,
we were off to another subject.
You have to be.
Probably an excellent decision all the way around. So the other book we're here, well, 2 more books we're here to talk about. One is, in fact, the
But let's talk about this. Look Closer, man.
Can I even mention Escape before we do that?
All right, sure.
Hold it up. This is the
Yeah.
new book that David and Jim Patterson have written together in yet a third voice. And then lurking behind all that, we'll just give a moment somewhere in this to James Patterson by James Patterson. And let me point out that David has thoughtfully signed, look closer for us. David assigned Escape, Jim assigned book plates for Escape. And then we have book plates that Jim assigned for James Patterson, covering the entire thing.
So
Okay.
I will just say this about James Patterson by James Patterson. I don't like autobiographies. I've never really enjoyed them. I even prefer biographies, but not autobiographies. This book was so much fun because I could hear Jim's voice. Jim doesn't like to bore people. He tries to always keep it tight. And these little stories, there's just a bunch of collection of stories of a really interesting life. And there, you fly through them. I read it in 2 days. It's like no autobiography I've ever read. It's so much fun.
Yeah, I mean, the nice thing for me, I'll get off of the autobiography very quickly, but of all the books I've ever done, it's the one that I've gotten the most praise for, which is, again, and not every single person, but most people. You know, I mean, some of it's so crazy. Here's the book here. Bill McRaven, Admiral McRaven, who wrote Make Your Bed, which has sold about 20 million copies. But he said the most entertaining book I've read in the past 50 years, which is pretty cool. And he's nobody's fool. I mean, he ran Navy SEALs, and then he ran the University of Texas university system. And yeah, but I get stuff like that, and it's really nice. But enough about the autobiography.
Yeah. Well,
Okay, well, we could go back to look closer. So I have two
Have
questions.
you read it, Barbara? Just
Have
say
I
you
read-
have and say something nice.
Well, of course
Yeah.
I've read it.
Oh, okay, all right.
And I will say something nice. My
Okay.
something nice is that I could tell how much fun you had writing it.
I did.
And that I also am impressed because we're coming up on year 33 for the Poison Pen on October 3rd. And I wish that, I mean, it seems to me, David, like it was like last year or maybe 5 years ago that we talked about your first book in 2001. So I'm losing, the years are all kaleidoscoping together. And what 21 years ago seems so. And so I envy, Jim, that you had enough, I don't know what, record keeping, great memory, people that remembered for you. How did it work?
I could, I either remember things very well, or I don't remember them at all. But if it's something that I mean, some of the things I can, that car I stole, I remember everything about it. There are just certain things that it's all right there. I can see it, and other things I don't. And you may, as you get older, I mean, when you get my age, Barbara, some of your friends will say, oh, you were with us and you don't remember being with them. And then, it's bizarre the way that, but my memory for a lot of this stuff is very, it's very clear. A lot of the celebrity stories, what's going to Woodstock, seeing the Doors, crazy chapter with the Doors in there, that musical group. And I remember it. I remember it like it was yesterday. At any rate.
Well, what a good thing that you wrote it down while you do remember it, because
I know that could happen at any moment.
Let's not go there.
You just fall
Right.
off a cliff, right? Yeah.
So, David, here are my two questions for you before we start. One, did you finish your book and turn it in that you were in such a panic about? Was it due yesterday?
It was due in March, and then it was due in May, and then it was July 1st. And no, I have not turned it in. It's almost done. I got to the end. I think I mentioned this to Jim the other night when we talked. Yeah, I just got it done. And now, of course, I have to obsessively go back through it. The hardest thing about these books for me, and every time I'm sending something to Jim to look at too, the hardest thing is to let it go, is to say, okay, this is good enough. Because you feel like you could always make it better, right? I could open any book I've ever written to any page and say, I could make that page better. I could at least change one word, but at some point you just have to say it's good enough. It's what I'm going to turn in. I'm not good at that. That's not my strong point.
Well, to be a published author, indeed, you have to let a book go in order to have it published. There's no question.
Yeah.
Right?
You would think I would be better at that now. And I think I'm worse. You would think I would write faster after writing 20 novels or something like that. I'm including the stuff with Jim. About half of my books have been with Jim, but I'm slower. I'm more demanding of my first draft. In fact, Jim has said to me before, just write it. Just, it doesn't have to be the final draft. Just write it, spit it out, and then look at it and then play with it. And I try to remind myself to do that, but I find myself being more demanding of myself while I'm writing.
I should talk to you every day. I should talk to you more often. We talk about every 2 weeks. I think every day would be good. Yeah.
That's probably a good idea, Jim.
Maybe the appellate process has really taken over, David. Judges live in fear of being reviewed. So
well, we do. I mean, when we do kind of talk every couple of weeks. That's usually the way it works. Publishers, it's like go ahead and then a year and a half later, you turn in the book and they go, well, this isn't what I was thinking of. But when we work, it's like 2 weeks, so it's not nearly as painful. And a lot of times it'll be, that's great. I love what's going on. Or hold it. We're marching in place, which is death for suspense novels, where it's just kind of sitting there, treading water, because you didn't think it through and you had this really cool idea, but you didn't know where it was going, and it's going nowhere, going nowhere slow. Yeah.
Going nowhere slow. Yeah, no, I mean, that was one of the problems I had with my publisher when I had a little bit of I wouldn't call it a divorce or a breakup, but a little bit of a disagreement with my editor. I think part of the problem is they didn't really know what I was writing until I turned it in. I mean, I described it to them, but they hadn't read it. When Jim and I do it, Jim has already conceived of every scene in the book. He's outlined every scene to begin with. And I think we both know it's not going to be exactly that. There's an organic process to writing. It'll change a little bit, but he knows exactly what he's expecting from the book. And so as we're doing it, he comes in already having the goal in mind and the themes he wants and the different things. And so, and
we actually changed quite a lot, and David adds a lot, which is really good. I mean, the one thing I do know is, I know whether a scene is working or not. I mean, that's the one thing. If you can write beginnings and ends to scenes, you will make a nice living. If you can write middles, you win the Nobel Prize.
And if you can deliver an end as good as the beginning, you are way ahead, because so often.
Speaking of look closer, the ending, everything just, and I was reminded as I read it the second time, it was like, oh damn, all this stuff just came together so beautifully in that book.
I've marked something I want to come back to at the end of the book, which is not a spoiler. But the other question I have for both of you really is, because, David, I'm from Chicago, Winnetka, you're in the area. Why for a huge city like Chicago compared to, let's say, Boston? Or why are there so few mystery writers or, thriller writers or writers about Chicago?
I never understand it. I don't know why there's not more written. I mean, now, of course, on television, there's an entire night of lineup of Chicago's PD and fire and all that. But Chicago has always been underappreciated, and it's got so much. I mean, there is obviously so much crime. There's so much corruption. I mean, there's so much fodder. People say, where do you get your ideas for your own books? And I say, I walk through the city and I open my eyes. I mean, and I listen. I mean, it's all right there. There's so much fodder. I don't know why, we don't seem to produce that many people, and people don't set that many books in Chicago. There needs to be more. I mean, Look Closer is set in Chicago, and
so is Escape.
Now that I'm sorry,
Escape, which we did together, that's set in Chicago, and that's just one of those like rollicking. We've got the Imperial Gangster Nation in there. Yeah. We've got this incredibly evil, awful, hideous billionaire. All the billionaires are terrible. We get the Russians. It's people say everything but the kitchen sink, and my thing is always like, what's wrong with the kitchen sink? Throw the kitchen sink in there too. Right. It does move.
When Jim was talking to me about Escape, I remember when we were first talking about it, he said push the envelope. Let's do some crazy. There's nothing wrong with crazy. The world's crazy. Let's be crazy too.
The world is definitely crazy.
It is. But I mean, that's one, Jim's taught me a lot. And I every time he calls me and says something to me, I learn something. But one thing he often talks about is that he said, don't be so worried about utter realism. I mean, you can push it a little bit. This is a book and they want to have fun. You can push it too far. Don't do that. But this book starts kind of crazy and it ends crazy and the middle's crazy. And it's got human trafficking. It's got billionaires.
And we've talked about it before, Barbara. Every once in a while, not every once in a while, but in particular newspaper people who tend to be very literal, and they'll go, well, this isn't very realistic. And that to me that's not something you should say about my books. I don't write realism. You can say I don't like it. You can say, it doesn't, but it's not, no, it's not, it isn't realistic, and it wasn't meant to be realistic. Alice Strauss is not realistic. Almost no detective fiction is really realistic. None of the cop stuff. It's not realism. No matter how real people make it appear to be, it's almost none of it is real. There's so much more that happens in these books than could ever happen in reality.
And the truth is, if you were trying to depict our current reality, nobody would believe you because it's a lot weirder than any fiction.
Yeah, this is true. I remember Philip Roth back in the 60s, and he said, I can't write any more fiction because reality is just too crazy. And I think it's crazier now than it's ever been.
Yes.
In terms of but that doesn't stop us, does it, David?
No, but I mean, you're actually sort of forging, a path of realism in the middle of chaos, which I think is.
I tell you, there's one, I'll get off of myself right here, but I have a book coming out later in the year called Blowback. And the concept, I think the concept is perfect. Imagine if an American president went insane in office. And I'm not going to get political about it. You can fill in your own person, whoever you want to put in there. You can put Putin in there. But and there used to be, Barbara, you remember 7 Days in May and some of those real paranoid thrillers that used to for a while. And I think we're in one of those eras now where paranoid thrillers, man, because you look around the world and it's like, oh my God, everywhere you look, it's another crazy thing going on,
And events keep overtaking you. We did Brad Thor's launch party last night, and his setting is India, which is unusual for a thriller. He's postulating China and India on the border. And everything he wrote about China and why they were behaving that way came true with Putin invading the Ukraine. It was like, real events with a different, overtook the fiction that he was writing, which of course I think is a hazard of writing those kinds of thrillers, is that, real life can cause you problems in their construction. But David, tell us about Simon and Vicky, this wealthy Chicago couple. Give me the elevator pitch for your book.
Yeah, Simon and Vicky are two people who care about each other, but they're very different, and they are probably not in love. And they both have affairs in the book, and the motivations of all of these four people, I would call it a love triangle, but it's really more of a love square. Everybody's motivation is going to end up not being what you think it is. The book begins with one of the four people dead. And so I'm giving no spoiler away. It's at the very beginning of the novel. She's hanging from a banister in a mansion. That sort of starts the formation of the book. And there's a police detective from this little suburban town who's never investigated a murder in her life, because there's never been one in this sleepy little bedroom community, who is a lot smarter than people think she's going to be. And she threads it out as it goes along. But otherwise, we see things through the three different viewpoints of Simon and Vicky, and the man who's having the affair with Vicky. And their motivations change throughout the book. And every time you think you know what they want and where they're going, I hope I switch it up on you and leave you kind of spinning in a circle.
You absolutely do. And I was spinning in a circle twice because I read it twice. Well, but in a good way,
In the descriptor, it says a wealthy Chicago couple, which introduces the idea of follow the money, or, that there has to be serious money involved in all of this. So without giving anything, is this book in part, like a con or a heist? I mean, if there's big money involved?
Yes, there is a trust fund involved with a hitch. So Simon inherited a lot of money. He inherited what is now about $21 million, which he's not spent. But the trust says that your wife cannot touch it until she's been married to you for 10 years. Simon's dad was burned in his marriage and with his money. And so when he left this for his son, he vowed he wouldn't let that happen to Simon. And so lo and behold, the book begins when we're about to come upon 10 years of marriage. And Vicky is maybe contemplating some things that may happen when she gets that 10-year mark and her hands on that money. So that money is certainly part of it. There's greed, there's obsession, I always say that Simon is a guy who has what I call Irish Alzheimer's, which means you only remember the grudges. Simon is a guy who remembers his grudges, just like the person who wrote this book, me. I remember all of my grudges going back to when I was a kid. Simon remembers the bully who bullied him when he was a diminutive little child. And there's a little bit in the book about how he deals with that problem. Simon is very effective about paying people back. And he's a mild-mannered guy, and he's kind of a geeky little law professor guy, but he knows how to pay back the debt.
But you know, one of the wonderful things about the book, Barbara, is you raised the thing about follow the money, and that's the cliche. When you look closer, this is not about follow the money. And that's true of everything here. Every little cliche you would have about a detective fiction, oh, I get where it's going. You don't. So you say follow the money. No, look closer. Look closer.
Yeah.
Well, but that's part of the sleight of hand, isn't it? Is to, introduce a trail that the reader thinks he should walk, and then it turns out that that's false.
That's always what we're trying to do.
Right. So law professor, I love that. Why did you decide to make Simon? I mean, we both went to Northwestern, although decades apart.
Sure. Right.
What, did you go to Northwestern Law School?
You're going to lose, David. You're going to lose the bet, David.
I did go to Northwestern Law School, and that part of Simon is me. I mean, I'm a judge, and I'm a geek about the law. And Simon talks about the Fourth Amendment. I have very strong views about the Fourth Amendment. I don't bore the reader with it. It comes up, and I actually tied into the plot a little bit. But no, that I felt kind of came out easily because it's me. But I like people who are passionate about things, and Simon loves being a professor. He loves to talk about the law. His mother did. He idolizes his mother, his dearly departed mother, who instilled that passion in him. I like putting passion in my characters. And sometimes I forget to do that. And then I've got a guy over here in the corner, Mr. Patterson, who will remind me, say, light him up a little bit, let's give him something, to motivate him. And I try to remember all my little Jim Patterson, lessons while I'm writing these books. Most of which is keep it going fast, keep it going hard, and don't let up. No wasted scenes, no wasted chapters, just to move a plot along. Everything's got to be there for entertainment value. But yeah, I thought that made sense to be Simon's passion, and I thought that would be disarming for him too, when you ultimately see what he's all about.
You have a really interesting paragraph for a judge and a law professor right at the end of the book, which I found absolutely fascinating.
Okay.
The brilliance of the law is that it's not concerned with one person, but with a system applicable to all. It protects the guilty so it can protect the innocent. It protected me, the guilty, from prosecution twice now. So I love that, you're actually using the law as an instrument.
Oh yeah. Well, it is. It's a deeply flawed instrument. The justice system in America, they always say, the old saying is, the American system of justice is the worst system in the world, with the exception of every other one. We have a lot of problems. We have a lot of problems in Chicago with our justice system, but it's still set up the best way it can be. We would rather let 10 guilty people go free than convict one innocent man. I mean, that's from a US Supreme Court decision that William Brennan wrote, and people still cite that all the time. Now, think about that. That's kind of crazy. Not everyone agrees with that, by the way, but I do. I mean, we the Constitution is set up to make sure that we don't put innocent people in prison, and we do put innocent people in prison. But we also sometimes try so hard not to, that people like maybe Simon or some others might be able to manipulate things to avoid prison when they should be going.
Yes.
Well, maybe. I'm not saying Simon did it, by the way. I'm just saying.
No, I wasn't either. I was leaving it as I thought it was an interesting
and did statement. What?
Exactly.
So what bet did David just lose, Jim?
Nobody's won anything yet. We'll see. We're just moving along here.
Okay. So talk about escape. Which one of you wants to do the sort of wonderful?
Well, as I said, part of it is just the number of things that are. It is about a big prison escape ultimately in Chicago, And we just keep building up the various characters who are going to be involved in that escape. One being this guy Jericho Hooper, and he runs the Imperial Gangster Nation. There's a Russian mobster involved. There's a billionaire, Henry Arcola, and they all wind up in prison. Then we have Billy and Patty Harney. Billy, I think the favorite, including all the cross books and whatever, but my favorite of the thrillers I've been involved in is the Black Book, which you want them all to turn out great, and they don't. But the Black Book, I think, really turned out well. It's complex. It's unexpected. The characters I thought turned out really well. Anyway, Billy and Patty are the stars of Black Book, and they're in this too, as is their father Daniel, who at the end of the book something happens with Daniel, kind of unexpected, which leads us probably to the next Billy Harney book, which we've already finished.
Yeah.
But Billy, gets involved in and then tracking down whoever makes it out of this jail in Chicago, and that's the basic story. Billy had lost his. Well, the other thing I like this better than David does, but I love the idea that Billy goes into this cop bar and he does stand-up comedy at night, and the comedy is all based on stuff that he's seen in Chicago, during the day or during the week. I love that. I love letting off steam with comedy. I'm doing, as Barbara knows, I'm doing stuff with Mike Lupica now, and we have 2 books actually next year. And Mike and I together are very funny. We golf together sometimes, and the caddies call us the show. And I love that. I love just letting off steam and letting it go, and I love the idea that Billy's funny. And one of the releases for me with the kids' books is the kids' books all tend to be somewhat comedic. Alex, not so funny. Billy can be very funny. And I like that.
So
Yeah, I mean
Billy's
that was one of the great things about Billy Harney, is that so this is the 3rd Billy Harney. We have the Black Book, the Red Book, and now Escape. We were trying to figure out a way to put the word book in this title, and I always defer to Jim. Jim is the master of titles. I wasn't sure how he was going to do this one, and it just came out with Escape, which is actually a great title for it. So this is number 3 of Billy, and we have finished number 4. But when this started, Jim, first of all, wanted to set it in Chicago because he knew that's where I was from, and he knew I knew Chicago very well. And he wanted a wisecracking guy, and he wanted him to be joking around and, serious guy, ethical guy, but a guy who can, see the humor in things. And I love writing that character. I mean, Billy is so much fun to write because as he goes through just about any scene, he's got something to say that's a little sideways and a little.
He's not like a wise guy,
right?
Wisecrack. He's genuinely funny and not necessarily at the expense of other people.
Right.
Which I like.
So he's
you
a
do
Chicago
like
cop.
that. I've noticed that about you, that sometimes in books I'll rip on someone and you'll say to me, don't be so harsh. I've noticed that you've done that a couple of times, and I don't do it anymore because I realize that.
I do. There was somebody that I was with, it was a big publishing meeting, and somebody made a crack about somebody who we might be making a deal with, call her a B-level actress, and I just found that offensive. Why would you say that? You don't know anything really about this person, no, don't do that. You don't know how she got. I mean, if Me Too means anything, and it's bigger than sex, then you don't know how this person got. I mean, God bless her that she got a lot of roles and stuff. But I don't like things like that. It rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah.
So David, you are still a sitting judge?
Yeah, I started in 2014. I'm on the Illinois Appellate Court, so I get all the appeals out of Cook County, which is dominated by Chicago. It includes a few suburbs like the one I live in, but it's mostly I get criminal and civil, so I get all the Chicago crime. So I get some pretty horrifying stuff.
How's it work in Illinois? Are you appointed or elected?
Elected.
So do you have to run
State court
again?
judges are elected. I'm sorry?
When do you have to run again?
I have a 10-year term, so 2024. So we'll
I'm
see.
really in favor of term limits. Let me just say my political statement.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm really in favor of term limits for politicians and judges. So we elect ours in Arizona too. And so they
Yeah.
rotate around.
It's probably not the right way to do it because nobody knows who they're voting for, but
That's
that's
right.
true of a lot of votes that people cast. They don't know who the Secretary of State candidates are. I mean, if you're not the governor or the president, they probably don't know who you are, and they vote anyways. They vote
And
on
even
your
if you're the president, they don't know who you are.
Well, maybe so. Right. Right.
Well,
So
Chicago was always a big political machine. I mean, I grew up, in the 40s when Mayor Daley, in fact, one of the biggest surprises I think I ever had was flying into O'Hare and seeing Mayor Daley welcomes you and realizing it wasn't the Mayor Daley that I knew. It was,
right.
the new Mayor Daley, but it was like a horrible deja vu moment. It was like,
Yeah.
whoa.
Right.
Well,
yeah.
the machine is going away. It's
Is it?
interesting. It is. It is. Things are changing quite a bit now. It's a changing of the guard. And one of the things that the machine did, which I mean, there's plenty of to not like about the machine, but one of the worst things is it did was it tended to discriminate. And one of the things you're seeing now is a lot more African Americans assuming positions of power, and they were pushed out by the machine. I don't think it was intentionally discriminatory, but the effect of it was. And so and the new people taking power don't build up these networks. It just doesn't work that way anymore. So believe it or not, it's not, Lori Lightfoot is the governor. I mean, she is the mayor of Chicago. She is definitely not a machine candidate, politician at all. She's the complete opposite. So it's actually changing quite a bit.
Well, that's heartening to hear.
I think we've gone from the machine to machines,
Yeah.
many machines,
Yeah.
which in some ways isn't necessarily the best thing either. All these islands.
It's kind of like when the mob broke up. When the mob broke up, or when you break down, in Chicago, we've taken down some really big street gangs, right? I mean, do you think that those people all stop, doing criminal behavior? No, they just break it into smaller groups. So now instead of 2 dominant street gangs in Chicago, we have 30 that have their own little fiefdoms. And I think Jim's right. I'm not sure that that's an improvement.
Yeah.
No, it probably leads to more rivalry and
Well,
more
it's certainly not
violence.
an improvement when there are certain times when we have to kind of band together. And, I mean, to me, you look at this, you getting the vaccine and stuff, and I both find that inspiring and incredibly sad. Inspiring because it demonstrates that if we work together, we can really do amazing things, and sad because we don't learn a lesson. We'll watch it and then we won't do it again unless there's another emergency.
Yeah.
We just.
Tribalism seems to have taken over. So I'm
we know.
really
I don't.
happy
It's
to
a
hear
strange. Whatever it is.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is then how does that affect you as a writer? Like I remember when I was doing whatever book I was doing with Jim during COVID, and we had a conversation. Do we address COVID? Do we just pretend like it's not there and just, we don't usually say what year it is in a book anyways, because you probably limit yourself if you do that. If you say, okay, it's 2021. Well, if you say it's 2021, people are going to say, well, where are the masks? And so but I remember these conversations, and I think Jim even was a little like, well, unless it's going to play a major role in the book, if that's actually going to be a, like you're gonna have like the COVID bank robbers or something because they can wear masks and get away with it. I mean, unless you're going to make it a highlight of the book, it's probably going to bring the book down. And I think we ultimately decided not to just blow it off, to just not address it. And that kind of gets back to Jim talking about, sometimes people don't need that much reality. Sometimes they're reading a book because they don't want all the reality, right?
Yeah, Barbara, I had this series. It started with Walking My Combat Boots. And then we went to ER nurses. And we love nurses. Yeah. If you read that book, you'll really love nurses because you'll know what the hell they do for the first time in your life. And people don't really know. They have no idea how intense the lives of ER nurses are. And I was going to make some point about where we were just coming from, but I don't remember what the hell it was. So we'll just move on to something else.
Okay. Well, I'd like to say that I think it's wonderful, Jim, that you give so many people voices, so many writers and so many groups voices, because some of your books are nonfiction or, you're telling people's or helping people tell stories. real stories.
There's
And
one coming that we're just I'm just finishing with Matt Eversman, who I did the combat boots with, which is booksellers and librarians.
wow.
Yeah.
Well, you know, your philanthropy to bookstores is legendary. We were lucky that we were actually in the first round of James Patterson bookstore grants. God knows how long ago that was.
Yeah, but once again, and people don't really understand what bookstore people do and what librarian, I mean, people, oh, I want to go work in a bookstore. I'll just read all day.
Yeah,
No,
right.
you won't.
Yes, the
No,
dirty
you
secret
won't.
of bookselling
And
is
the
that
joy will be that you're going to recommend books to people and they're going to love you for it. And that's the joy. But
it
there's
is.
also going to be an incredible amount of work involved.
And
And
it's gotten more
Barbara,
complicated.
and Barbara, you're right that Jim has been really good to his co-authors. He's very supportive of his co-authors. He always, like I said, he's always been telling me, get back to writing your own books. Like he's the first one in line saying, write your own book, even if it slows you down on our book, do that. And people have said to me, what's the secret of longevity? Because you hear, oh, the average author maybe has 10 years, unless they hit it big, and a few hit it big, but most don't. You're gonna fall to a mid-list or lower level, and you're gonna fall out of favor. You're gonna be done. And people say, what's been your secret? What's your story, Dave? What's your summary of your longevity? And I say, Jim Patterson. I mean, when Jim came along, I was doing fine as an author, but I wasn't a bestseller. I've never been a bestseller on my own. I'm hoping to be with Look Closer. I think this is probably the closest thing I've ever written to a bestseller. But Jim said, let's write these books and let's always have fun. Let's always have fun when we're doing it. I remember one book, Invisible. We were halfway through it and we were trying to come up with the worst serial killer of all time. And I sent him a couple of chapters, and he said, we're not going to do this. And you know why we're not going to do it this way? Because you're not going to enjoy it, Dave. You're going to hate it. You're going to have nightmares about this. It's not going to be a good experience, and that's going to translate onto the page. And he's always about, let's have fun. And so like he's done this, I think, for a lot of us. I know Jim Bourne writes a lot of books with Jim, and I've known Jim Bourne for years. Jim and I were both at Putnam as mid-list authors.
You like him?
What's that?
You like Bourne?
No,
Really?
not really. I think he's kind of a
Okay,
jerk,
okay, all right, good.
but no, but I mean, we're like, Jim Patterson comes along and says, let's go have fun. I mean, he always says he hasn't worked for 25 years, right? Like he said, this isn't work, we're having fun. And we're working hard, but let's enjoy it while we're doing it. And,
I remember when I was doing the book shots and I needed a bunch of people to write with. And what I did is I went to the the paperback or the books that come out every year, the Best American Mystery Stories. I just started reading them like crazy. And I was looking for people that could write scenes. That's what I wanted. And I found Brendan Dubois. And I said, this guy's good. And he was, and so I call him up. I go, yeah, hey, this is Jim Patterson. He hung up on me. He thought it was some crank call or whatever. Yeah, so I called again. Now this really is, whatever. What do you want? And then we've done a bunch of things since then. But
he's great.
Yeah. And it's been fun.
Writer. I've always liked his New Hampshire coast. Because I thought he did a wonderful job doing that. So Jim, you operate basically as a publishing company of your own. So when you and David are through, you've played an author and an editorial role. Does somebody else step in, or basically when you turn it in, it's done and off it goes?
No, well, it's in good shape. And the way we deal with the editorial is we're not scared of the editor. Some authors, they have to be scared of the editors because, oh my God, if I don't, this person could basically fire me, which isn't ideal. But it's a reality with some authors and some editors. But our thing is, if we agree with it, we do it. And if we don't agree with it, we don't do it. And that's the deal. Well, we have a very good editor. Michael Peach was my editor for a while. I don't remember whether Michael was early on with David or not.
Yeah.
And now we have Denise Roy, who's wonderful. I mean, she dots the I's and dots them again and dots them again. But she really does pay attention. She has great passion. And she knows that we're going to change the things that we agree with, and some of them we're not going to agree with. And yeah, you go write your own book.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's certainly true. So before we call Patrick up, one other question, Jim. You had a phenomenal success with Dolly Parton and Rose Run.
Yeah.
What's new with it? Is there going to be a movie?
Oh yeah. No, it's actually. I think this one is actually going to. We're in pre-production on Alice Cross with a TV series with Amazon, so that's real. That's been greenlit by Amazon, so that's happening.
Wonderful.
But the Run Rose Run, we have Reese Witherspoon's company, Hello Sunshine, is going to produce it. And the reason Dolly and I, it's the same thing we want. This may sound simple-minded, but we just want it, when this movie comes out, we want to say we're glad we did it. It's the same way we felt about the book and about the album. We're glad we did it. This was a cool thing. It was neat to do. Dolly and I have become really great friends, which is very nice. But with Reese, we just looked at the stuff that Hello Sunshine has done, and we went, everything they've done well. And Crawdads is the next, which is coming out this month. And that's very good. And they produced it with Sony, and we're producing this with Sony. And Sony is really good with films, and they're also like, get it done. And the deal they signed up with us means they got to get it done. There's no messing around. And tomorrow, actually, Dolly and I are talking to the screenwriter.
Wonderful.
So
is she going to write? Is she going to write something original for the movie?
I'm sure she will. She's gonna be in the movie.
Oh, good.
So that's and everybody we talked to, Spielberg, J.J. Abrams, everybody wanted her in the movie. That was a big attraction. And she will write some, I'm sure, she certainly, they've asked her, and she will write some original music for the movie. Yeah.
That's exciting. Patrick,
Yeah,
why don't you come join us and see if we have any questions or comments from the audience? After all, it's the point of doing this live.
Yeah, let's see here. Let's see what we got. Yeah. Number of questions have come in. Let's see. Yeah, we have a viewer from Italy. Italy named Stefania. She says, Mr. Patterson, I started reading your books when I was a teenager, and you are one of the first authors who made me love this literary genre. I have a corner of my book collection dedicated to you. Thank you for your wonderful stories. And I think her question regards, how do you keep coming up with ideas? Are your antenna constantly out there looking for plot ideas, or how does that work?
My antenna is in here. I'm constantly, I have 4 of them on my desk, 4 outlines that I don't even know what the hell to do with them. I've been doing some things because I can't do any more books. Little Princess says, no more, stop. So I've been doing some podcasts with Audible, which is really great fun. And another kind of a challenge, because those you got to make something go for 6 or 7 hours and keep it interesting. Imagine doing a 7-hour movie. And you have to keep repeating characters' names so people can know who the heck is talking, So David, how are you? Oh, hi, Barbara. But that's fun. But yeah, my strength is a big imagination.
Yeah, I don't know how he does it, but he always does it. He always, we were working on an outline recently that I was developing a little bit, and I could tell he wasn't thrilled with it. He was very nice about it, and he said, "Well, let me think about something. I've got an idea." And 2 days later, he had a fully developed outline for a whole different story. And I don't know how he does it, but he does it.
Wow. Let's see here. Well, I actually have a question about the gentleman, the football player. You wrote that book about the concussions, and oh boy, I'm drawing a blank on the guy's name. The football player who was ended up killing somebody.
Aaron.
Oh, Hernandez.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That must have been an intense book to research and write.
Well, it was a weird book to research. One of the things I did when it came out, I did the 2020, I think it's 2020, right? And they let me do the interviews. so I was sort of like the 60 Minutes kind of person, whatever. And I had to interview the mother of the man who Hernandez got convicted for that particular murder.
Right.
And I'm up and I'm supposed to be like Leslie Stahl or one of these, buttoned up, and the woman is telling her the story and I'm weeping. And I'm going like, all right, I can't do this, this is, but while I was doing the book, he was declared innocent for 2 other murders in a court trial while the book was going on. And then while he was writing the book, he killed himself. So a lot of things happened there. And so that made the whole thing fascinating. And it was an amazing story. And it was also interesting when we like with 2020, we reached out to Tim Tebow, and he wouldn't do it, which I really wanted to talk to him. And he was at the Breakers in Florida, which is about a mile from my house. I said, I will come. I will, trust me. If you don't like a question, and I really wanted to talk to him because he had been Hernandez's roommate on the road anyway, down at University of Florida. And on the other hand, Urban Meyer was right there. He did a nice long interview, and he had really worked hard with Hernandez, had him in the house all the time for dinner, take him to church, all sorts of things. Trying to obviously make sure that the kid stayed on the football team, but also that trying to straighten him out as much as he could. So it was a very strange story. Yeah.
Yeah. And also, I mean, just the sheer breadth of the subject material you deal with is always impressive. I mean, the John Lennon book, what a great book. We had a fun program about that. Mm-hmm. And now, can you give us a taste?
We're doing this year, Diana, William and Harry. And I talked a little bit, and I said, the danger there is people go, oh, Jesus, another Diana book. It isn't another Diana book. This is Diana as a mother. And the boys said about, in a tribute, they said she was the best mother in the world. And in a lot of ways, it's the book that's most true to who she was as a human being. Being a mother was hugely important to her. She loved the boys, she idolized them. And The Crown had an incredible effect on her as a mother. And ultimately what happened had an incredible effect on William and Harry. So it's a very different kind of book. And I wouldn't have done it, I have no interest in her as a princess. But her as a mother, I found that to be an interesting story. And Epstein, obviously, I mean, not that I'm comparing Diana and Epstein, but I mean, it's just an amazing story. We're doing one on Vegas now. And that's going to be really, really cool too. It's just, we have to go out to the Chamber of Commerce out there and say, I don't like Vegas all that much, but I read this book and I go like, I want to go to Vegas. It's so many cool stories in it. It's very interesting, different.
What can you tell us about The Doors? You got my curiosity piqued.
Oh, in the autobiography, it's one of the stories. I was, as I said, I was at Woodstock, and everybody my age says that they were there, but they're lying because I looked around and I didn't see any of them. But I was also an usher at the Fillmore East. And back in those days, there was a Fillmore West and a Fillmore East, and everybody played there. So when I was an usher there, I saw Jimi Hendrix, I saw The Doors, I saw Jefferson Airplane, Grateful Dead, you name it, I saw. But The Doors, all right, so after the show, and Robert Mapplethorpe was actually one of the ushers. I knew him a little bit, which is weird. And his girlfriend was Patty
Smith.
Patty Smith.
Yeah,
I knew her a little bit. At any rate, so after the second show, one of the nights that The Doors played, the ushers, we all sat down there, and Bill Graham and The Doors were sitting in the front row of the theater. And it was this old vaudeville theater. It was about 4 stories high. And what the hell is his name? Jim Morrison He's staring up, and there are all these lights hanging up about 4 stories above the seats. And he goes, Jesus, Bill, those could come down here and kill everybody. This is terrible. You got to get rid of, you can have those lights up there. And Graham going, you're nuts, stop it. And Morrison really got irritated, and he just walked off. And about 10 minutes later, we hear the screaming, and we look up, and Morrison is hanging from the lights, and he's going from lights to lights like an ape or something. And he's yelling down to Graham. He says, "You're right. These lights are really secure." So that was a Jim Morrison story. And I was afraid I was going to see Morrison die, but he saved that act for Paris about a year later.
Wow. So you saw most of the members of the 27 Club in their prime, it sounds like. Hendrix, Joplin, probably.
I saw Joplin at Woodstock, not at the. I don't remember whether she played at the Fillmore or not. I didn't see every single concert at the Fillmore, but I saw a lot of them.
Wow.
And then I worked at my college. I worked my way through, all in this book, James Patterson by James Patterson.
Yeah.
But I worked my way through college at a mental hospital in Massachusetts, McLean Hospital in Belmont, and James Taylor was the patient there. And that was very interesting too. He wasn't famous at the time, but he had written a lot of his songs. He'd written Fire and Rain and Sweet Baby James, and he used to sing at the coffee shop. So I got to sit there and sit 10 feet away from James Taylor singing Fire and Rain and whatever. And Robert Lowell was a patient too. So I got to listen to Robert Lowell and listen to James Taylor and get paid for it. So that was pretty cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
Taylor was strung out on heroin for a long time, wasn't he? James Taylor.
When he was there, no. I think that happened later. I think it might have been, I don't know, after we married Carly Simon. I'm not exactly sure where that happened, but at that point, no. He was there, and so was his brother Livingston and his sister Kate, all 3 of them. And there was a school on the grounds, and Kate and Livingston used to go to school. I used to bring them to school sometimes. I didn't know James all that well, other than to listen to him singing at the school. He was very handsome, thin, long hair. He had long hair then. I had long hair myself, but
Have you connected with him later in life now that you've
No.
That would be interesting.
Yeah, it would be.
Yeah. Let's see here. Sorry, I can go off on these musical digressions. Barbara endures them all the time, but let's see any other questions that have come in here.
Lie about it. Just make this shit up, Patrick. Come on.
Patrick's just not old enough to have experienced the things he'd like to have experienced. He's just too young to have done it.
Well, that's true. That's true.
It is true. It was just an accident of birth, honey.
Well, yeah. Any other? Well, can you tell us a little bit about the project that you have together? You said you finished one. There's already a kind of a book in the can. Anything you could reveal about that yet, or?
Well, so the 4th Billy Harney,
right?
Best one yet, right, David?
I think it is. It was crazy. It was another time where Jim said, "Let's push the envelope," and I pushed it, and he would laugh at me sometimes. But I think it's really Billy and his sister Patty, and of course the ever-present father, who's a very that he turned into a really fun character that I think we have fun with every time. He's kind of on the lam. So he sort of pops up in funny places, but that has turned it. Jim's always like, okay, let's get Daniel in there. Let's get Daniel in there. And so we're always throwing him in, and it's turned out to be a real fun side thing.
Yeah, I love Billy though. Billy hasn't caught on quite the way, like Alice Cross or whatever.
Right.
But I think Billy is just as interesting, or maybe more interesting, than some of the other detectives.
David,
I love Billy. I think Billy's great.
Yeah, Billy has kind of an innocence and an idealism about him, which I really like. He can be tough, and when a cop needs to be tough, he can be tough. But he's a sweet guy, and he's got a soft heart, and he's a soft heart for the underdog, and he goes to bat for people. And in this next, well, certainly in Escape, he gets very emotional when he cracks a pretty bad ring of bad guys and saves some people. He's a sweet guy. I think he's a really well-rounded character.
Yeah,
And that's just a product of Jim and I going back and forth with him over the books. And I think I'm glad he happened.
I'm always fascinated by, characters, which characters readers bond with and which they don't. And there's
sometimes it takes a while. It takes a while. Michael Bennett. Michael Bennett's the next one coming out, and that keeps building, which is interesting. That's President Clinton's favorite. He's a big mystery reader, but of all my stuff, Michael Bennett is his favorite.
Of all the co-authors that you've worked with, I hate to say.
Want me to rank them?
Yeah.
Please rank them.
No, are there any favorites that you have besides the company included?
That's one of the jokes in the autobiography. I give a few of them a shot, including David.
Yeah.
And I start with a friend of mine, Peter DeYoung, and Peter has about a half page talking about what it's like to work together. And I say, no wonder, Peter is my favorite co-writer, knowing that the other co-writers will read the damn thing and get irritated. And then the next one, David says a few things, and I go, no wonder David is my favorite co-writer. And every one of them we play the same game. But I just love the idea of them reading this and going, Peter DeYoung, are you kidding? That guy, he's the favorite.
A straw man. You have set up a straw man, Jim. That's wonderful.
I like Michael Ledwidge. I thought he was a really good writer in his own.
Hey, yes. Yeah. Peter, I'll tell you, Peter did a couple of mysteries. They didn't go anywhere, but they're really good. Peter's mysteries Peter's a very good writer. And Michael's a good writer.
So what's going on with you and Mr. Lupica?
Well, we have two books next year. The first one is House of Wolves, and both of our wives say it's the best thing either one of us has ever done. It's a really good story. If I love, and so does this country, bloody family sagas with nasty families, and that's what it is. And so, we get the Corleones, and then we have the family in Yellowstone, and then we have the Wolves, because it's about a family in San Francisco, and they own the football team and they own the newspaper, and they've been taught to eat one another, as brothers and sisters or whatever. And it's a really good story. Worked out really well. You never know, but if the wife, if my Susan likes it, David has a Susan too.
Yep.
And
did you both see the Sixth Session?
Mike Lupica has a Taylor.
Right. You should spend some time with Mr. Lupica. He is one of the funniest. He just is effortlessly.
He's not as funny as me. We've agreed on that, Mike and I.
I spent a lot of time with him because he's taken over the Robert Parker franchise as well as writing with you. And
yeah.
Right. So we see a lot of each other, and I'm always astonished at just how.
Yeah, he's about to do the Spencer novels.
Yes, he is. I've got Jesse Stone in September, and then Spencer later. But
I'm going to get him out of it. I'm going to rescue him from that someday.
All right. He's just effortlessly funny.
It's effort with him. We have the same dermatologist, and the dermatologist has basically given me a little bit of an edge on the humor.
Okay. I wouldn't have looked at that for the common denominator there. But
yeah. Well, there are a few. Taylor thinks I'm funnier. Sue thinks he's funnier. When he calls and his name shows up on the thing, she immediately starts laughing and falls to the floor. My wife. I hate that.
Well, we will look forward to it. And David, my takeaway from this conversation, which I knew already, is that I think Jim is a person who experiences the world as stories. It's the only explanation for how he manages to do all this. Some people can, but I feel like you're like a Doberman in the wind, as it's blowing by and all of those scents and so forth. And I think, Jim, the world is like that for you. It's just stories blowing by.
Well, as I say, and some people don't believe it, and they think you just, it's an act. But I'm not working. I'm playing. It's and how can you beat that? You
can't. Absolutely. And to be honest, it's really nice not to have to worry about the money. So, David, yes. You have a real job. So it makes it a little.
Look at this wealth behind me. My God, There's a telescope, for God's sakes.
That's right. Really impressive. Well, we've had a lot of fun at the Poison Pen too, with a not-for-profit attitude. Although every once in a while, I think we should be smarter about money, right, Patrick? But
No comment.
it's not our driving force. Anyway,
that's the great thing about writing for me is I feel like it's my vacation. I do it
Yeah.
early in the morning, and then I go and I do my real job. This is not my real job. This is my fun. This is my vacation every day.
that's
It's like
wonderful.
it's like my children, when you got to get up your kids for school, they don't want to get up. But if you're getting them up to get on an airplane to go to Disney World, they'll pop right out of bed. I wake up at 3:30 every morning, but I do it happily because once I've awakened, I'm like, okay, I get to go play now for 3.5 hours until 7 a.m. And so that's my time, and that's my little vacation. I start every day with a little vacation. It's great.
What
Yeah.
time do you go to bed? 7?
No, 10,
Like a Trappist
10:30.
monks.
Yeah. I mean, my kids are getting older, so they stay up now. And so they're killing me a little bit, but it's okay. What are you going to do? I mean, it's all good. I mean, I like being a judge. It's fun. This is really fun. This I love. The writing is, look closer. It was a labor of love. I mean, it's a silly cliche, but it really felt that way. Like every day I couldn't wait to get to it.
Have you sold the film rights for Look Closer yet?
We have. We've sold it to I guess we're not allowed to announce it yet, but we have, so I won't announce who, but a major streaming service. I think unlike Run Rose Run, it's not going to be a feature film. It would be a series, but somebody's attached to it who really loved Vicky, really took to the female character who I love in the book. And so, Jim taught me, when you co-write with Jim Patterson, you learn a little bit about Hollywood through him, because everybody's always, he's optioning everything. And he always says, it doesn't happen until it happens. The Black Book was going to be a series on CBS, and then it wasn't. So I keep
And
my powder
a really good script too. I mean, some of the stuff you just go like, what? And then you look at what they're putting on there and you go like, who is selecting this stuff? I mean, sometimes it doesn't work out, but the Black Book script was really, really good. I don't know,
Yeah, had our hopes up for that.
Well, we'll hope that Look Closer does extremely well. So
Yeah.
let me just say that we have autographed copies that should be popping in any day. So enjoy it. And it's really nice to have you back, David.
Oh,
7
it's so
years
good to
is
be
a
here.
long time. So welcome
So
back.
good to be here, and so glad Jim could come. That's really means a lot to me that he showed up.
I was back and forth. Should I go? Should I?
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
I had to beg.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you very
David.
much.
You guys are
It's
great.
always
Thank
a pleasure. We'll look forward
Bye-bye.
to seeing you again soon. Bye.
Okay,
Good night,
thank you.
everybody.
Bye.
Hello. We hope you're enjoying our programs and podcasts with authors. We'd like to expand them, and your help would be appreciated. Please make a donation at poisonedpenfoundation.org. 100% of the proceeds will go to help connect authors with readers in this difficult time. Thank you.